Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Valentine's Day, February 14th, and it's the Elementary School Building Committee. Isn't that good? That brought a smile. And my first task, seeing there's a quorum, is to make sure that all the committee members can see and be heard, hear and be heard. So I'm just going to call people in the order that I see them on my screen. Melissa,
Here.
Paul,
Present.
Bruce,
I am here.
Jonathan,
Here.
Deb. Deb, can you hear us? We can't hear you. I can see your lips. You're here. Okay. Simone,
Here.
and I've heard from at least two people that they couldn't make it, so I haven't heard from anyone else. So I think we'll start because we have a fairly short focused meeting. As you saw on the agenda, if you looked at the agenda, it's a schedule update to the extent there is one, and a construction update on where we are, any other information, invoices, and public comments. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I think, well, Margaret, Ksenia, you tell me who I'm turning it over to.
I'll take it.
And so I think I have, let's see. I've enabled screen sharing if you need it. Or if
Thank
it's
you very
verbal,
much.
if it's verbal, you don't need it, yeah.
From here on out, a lot less verbal and a lot more show and tell because we actually have something to show. Happy Valentine's Day. Overall schedule update, we have started. We are 2 weeks into the construction process. We expect the school to be turned over for the school year that it was planned. There will probably be there will definitely be some site work and things that need to be finished afterwards as planned that may go into past the winter of 2027 because of where the planting seasons are landing. But as far as occupying the school, the general shape of a project, everything is full speed ahead and faster than anticipated because we did, of course, start a little later than anticipated. I will show you some pictures of where we are now and where we started 2 weeks ago. Let me just shift some of these bars around so that they don't block your view. Are you able to see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can see it, so I don't know, I assume others can, yeah.
Okay, so this is what it looks like when you start doing concrete foundations in February, right? We started on February 3rd, the first Monday, and now here we are on the 14th, 2 weeks later, and we will, move through, as we move through the pictures, you'll see things change. CTA has been excavating in small sections, only enough for what they need, because all of this soil, most of which is the surcharge soil that was installed by the early site package, is actually acting like a blanket for the ground underneath and keeping it warmer than it otherwise would have been. Everything that they install every day is wrapped and heated. Here's the crew continuing to work, and you could see the progress. We had our first concrete placement in the middle of last week, and we've had, I think, 3 or 4 more since then. The entire team is all eyes on deck, all hands on deck, out on the field every day, monitoring the weather conditions and doing all the appropriate things that are a little bit more sophisticated in this season than they would be a few months from now, to make sure that the quality of installations is as it would have been if this was done not in a cold weather environment. There have been no safety incidents on site. The building permit is still outstanding, but the foundations permit is in place. The permit to have set up the trailers on site, the offices is in place. And those offices are in the process of being set up. So soon, more of a team will be working productively on site, and the construction is progressing. I will stop there and offer the opportunity to Rick to add anything I may have missed.
Uh,
Um,
Just that the submittals have been rolling in. We've been turning them around. Tim, how much of the steel has come in so far?
I would say 2/3 of the steel has come in. We've probably, I think it's 9 total sequences. We're working on returning 4 now. CTA has been pretty cooperative in terms of getting the stuff that they need to us, and we think we have been too. But given the delay, actually the submittals are coming in maybe a little bit faster than they normally would. We also have some finishes for the interior submitted at this point that we're already reviewing, which may not have happened under a normal schedule. So we're, I don't want to say we're ahead of the game. We're focusing on the things that we have to do first, but things are moving as smoothly as we could hope.
Tim, I will say that you are ahead of the game, and every week when we come into a meeting with CTA and we look at what's outstanding in review, there's basically nothing, because this design team is rocking it with turning everything around basically as soon as is humanly possible. I don't think I've ever seen such a thing happen this well, this quickly. Everyone's playing well together. And at the same time, very focused on holding everyone accountable, everyone's feet to the fire. It's because of how we got started, this is a much more intense project. Every deadline is that much more critical. And everyone so far is rising to the occasion with flying colors. I hope to be able to continue to say exactly this for all the months to come, but it's a very good start.
So Deb, I saw your hand go up. Did you take it down or?
I was trying to leave a question in the chat, but
please
there's no
do.
chat.
But we don't have a chat enabled, so we don't have one.
Okay, it can wait.
Okay. So I have a question that I think was asked separately. Ksenia, if a group of people on the committee at some point wanted to come and see the construction site, how would we arrange that? And I assume you don't want us all just traipsing in there. So, and I guess timing, Ksenia sent an update through to Tammy that said the steel, some of the support things, structures, going to start going up in March. Is that correct? Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's sort of a question of if we wanted to see something worth seeing, when might be a good time, and how would we arrange that?
It's a fantastic question. I really appreciate you bringing it up. We absolutely want to create opportunities. And there is definitely a safe process for doing that, and an unsafe way. The unsafe way would be just showing up, right? I mean, unless you want to look through a fence, in which case that's perfectly safe. We right now is a very, so firstly, there's not much to see other than what I just showed you, and the pictures you got are the good views of it, right? And right now it's cold, it's muddy, it's slippery. There's a lot of construction equipment, heavy equipment moving around. And those folks have their work cut out for them, keeping each other safe and keeping the project moving without accommodating a tour. Also, there's not anything interesting to see. During steel erection, which is going to start at the top of March, the site becomes a controlled access zone. That means that even CTA oversight people are not allowed to enter past a certain point while the steel erector is putting up the erector set, because it's an awfully large erector set, right? And all the quality inspections of that even have to wait until they are done and everything is safe and stable. But there's always in construction a really exciting moment where usually there's a celebration planned for the topping off ceremony. And I would suggest that that would be a really great moment to aim for and something to plan. Just like when we did the groundbreaking, it took a little time to make arrangements. So I assume for the topping off ceremony, I will talk to CTA and try to pull their head out of the excavation that they're working on now and see if we can plan ahead and pin down when in their process this is going to happen. The way that the ceremony usually happens, there usually one of the top beams is left off and left on the ground. Sometimes it's painted. People are given the opportunity to sign it. There's usually a Christmas tree that's sat on top of a beam, and there's some speeches, there's some photo opportunities, and then it is raised into place. That often happens, you know, at a designated time. But we also need to make sure that we're not holding up construction by waiting in the ceremony too long. After that, what we will arrange tours. I would say upon request, but I would love to organize it a little bit better than that, you know, maybe have it some sort of a regular thing. And we requests should definitely come from me. I would appreciate it. And so that we can coordinate a safe way to do it with CTA. We will try to keep CTA working productively and maybe do the visits later in the afternoon when most of the trades go home. There will be a lot of long days on this site, so we'll find ways to incorporate and make sure that the folks walking through are well escorted, right? So no wandering off on your own. We will do a pretty detailed safety orientation and make sure you know what the hazards are at any given moment, that everybody is equipped, you know, no showing up in flip-flops, that kind of thing.
So
Yeah,
Paul,
kind of
I see
question.
Paul, Chad, and Bruce. First, Paul.
Great, thank you. So, so when you get to the topping off, I think topping off ceremony is the next logical time to invite people onto the site. I mean, I drive by there a lot and look in, so you can look in from the fence. You can see this sort of general stuff going on. You're right, there's not much to see other than piles of dirt and equipment, which is kind of cool. But you know, when you get to that point, I would first question, what month do you think that topping off ceremony would have? And when you get to that point, I would like you to work with Angela Mills in my office to help coordinate and make sure all the right people are invited and stuff like that.
I would expect it to be no earlier than late March and possibly into early April, but I need to get back to you, having spoken with CTA on the exact time.
But no, the topping off, if they start putting steel up in March, it's not going to be for several weeks likely. So, and I also just like to add that it's a big MSBA photo op too, so they need to be involved as well.
Certainly.
Could just, I'm going to call on Bruce, but just tell us lay people like Kathy, what does topping off mean in this case?
It's the last beam going up.
Okay.
So it's celebrating that the structural steel is up, which is probably the most visually impactful thing. There was no building, and now there's a building, even though you could see through it.
So yeah, they have like a giant beam, hopefully painted white. Everybody gets to sign it. And all the kids get to sign it, and then they lift it up and you see it go on top of the building. It's a really eventful day.
Bruce.
Oh, I was going to say something else, but what Paul just said suggests that maybe the crane drops the beam into the playground for half an hour and then and then moves it back out again. But because I like that idea. But I was going to suggest or ask whether after the topping off, maybe every 2 months might be a regular time, and then as we get approaching this time next year, or at least spring of next year, when the things are happening more rapidly and so forth, maybe that becomes 1 month, and then people just get into the habit of signing in, saying school committee members or ESBC members is just notify Angela or say or that we're interested in attending, and then it becomes a regular event that people know about. People who have business know about it, and can make a fairly effortless and regular event. But I think that something like that sounded to me like it would be the easiest way, because then everybody knows there's a rhythm to it, and it takes the initiative and the organizing, consuming, time-consuming part of it goes away. So that's what I would suggest we consider.
Okay. And that would be the last part you just added, Bruce, to make it consume the least amount of time of our project team as well, you know, so.
Yes, when you have a regular event, I mean, when we did this sort of thing, that was what we did. We just made it, we folded it into the program, and it didn't require anybody's time particularly. It was something that was organized already, and it just was topped off, shall we say, as each month or bi-month period ticked by, and you knew who was signed up, and you could give a prompt a week before saying Friday at 12 is the the next opportunity. Please sign in if you have interest, and then of course if there's more than enough, then it might become a problem. I don't know, but we could start off assuming that people who signed in would not overtax the system.
Bruce, that is a very good idea, and having organizationally regularly pre-planned dates pinned in place will be very helpful. It is never going to be a process that doesn't require special organization every time, because the shape and the stage of construction changes weekly and definitely monthly, and the kinds of hazards that we have to lead people around carefully will continue to evolve. And while we are committed to satisfying the curiosity of everyone involved, we are far much more committed to their safety. And so we will be taking each tour very seriously, and a level of effort involved will correlate to how large of a group we're leading through. So we will get back to you hopefully in the next meeting with some better information and a good plan. And we will also overlay that plan over the construction schedule, which is still in development, to understand what people might be able to see on site, how done it will be at that particular moment in time, and then people might be more or less interested in attending specific moments.
Got it.
Deb.
Yeah, thanks. Just thinking about being mindful of what one of the community members said about that this is an all-town event, and there are going to be students from the greater community that will be able to attend this school, and students who will not. We haven't figured out the districting yet, so just be thoughtful about that if we're going to have students involved in signing things. And it was an all-town commitment, is an all-town commitment, certainly to fund it. So I just want to make sure that the entire Amherst community is involved in whatever celebration that is going to take place.
And Deb, we can work with Answer, but also, as Paul said, with Angela, because when we were way back when we were planning all of this, we were doing community forums, and notices went out through the school system as well. So once we figure out how we might do what, we can figure out a way of reaching middle and high school as well as elementary schools, which was the request. So I think that's a point well taken. And then Ksenia's, that for some kind of regular touring, there may be group size limits, but for celebratory events, we'll figure out a way of doing something else.
And then just 2 questions, but one was the implications of any tariffs in terms of the price of the project.
I can answer that without answering it.
Yeah.
And that is that on the one hand, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Because they haven't kicked in yet, right? I think March is the time. On the other hand, I have heard market analysis and presentations by several construction managers in Massachusetts on this point, and taking into account the fact that of a project budget, a portion is materials, and only a portion of those materials come from abroad, right? And then the tariff might be a percentage increase to those materials. So it's a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. So it's not like one massive increase to every single thing that's happening. I've seen indications or guesstimates. This is people trying to use their crystal balls. There was somewhere in the 2 to 4% range on certain, as a percentage of a project. It depends on the project, it depends on the situation, and it's we hate to speculate, but we are aware of it, and we will deal with it to the best of our ability as it comes up. And it's not all the dealing with it is not always a matter of taking that hit. It may be a matter of, well, what else can we do? Can we use something different? And is that any cheaper or possible to get in a timely manner? So we can't start dealing with it until anything has been presented to us, and no one can present anything yet because they don't know themselves.
So I just want to, I know Allison has joined us, and Allison, hi, welcome. I just want to make sure you can hear us and we can hear you. Okay,
Hi, this is me.
great. Thank you. Thanks for making the time.
I had a second question.
Sure.
Is there an ability for there to be a webcam anywhere so people could? No. Okay.
I can explain why.
Sure.
It is it is a difficult thing to do because you have people actively working on site, and as they work, they are always careful to assure safety at the highest level. But at any given time, there might be a condition that may, be in progress and has not yet been rectified. And CTA will they have a policy that is very standard for the industry to not even share their ongoing camera roll, and to take pictures carefully as they do, and not to have people sitting at home watching watching them on a webcam and commenting and submitting. So that is the reason for it. We've seen some of our projects have invested in having drone flyovers. Or maybe if it's a student project or something, usually on the weekend when there's no construction work going on, and those present some pretty cool images. So there are ways around it, and an ongoing video of every moment of construction for a time lapse is not necessarily that.
Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any hands. And so, I think so the next item would be invoices. Let me just make sure that I'll disconnect that phone. Sorry, there's no other person in the house with me right now to answer the phone. The next meeting is going to be March 16th, so we will get some updates on this, but right now, the next item on the list is invoices. Unless anyone else has another item to add.
I jumped the gun a little too soon there.
No, perfect.
So you guys can see this then?
Yes, but Connor, we have a big black block on the right-hand side where you are seeing people's
Ah,
faces. I don't
yep.
know why
Oh.
it does this,
No way.
but if you could try to move it out of the way,
Did not help. Let's see, hide thumbnail.
Okay,
I continue to
There we
struggle
go.
with that myself.
Yep. All right, hopefully that's better.
Much
Yeah.
better. Thank you.
that's good.
Yep, so starting off, as normal with our executive summary, our top left graph here, our bar chart here, pretty much unchanged from last month's presentation, except last month's package is now in the previously invoiced green category, and our new invoice package is here in this black bar. It's slightly smaller than last month's, but visible, which is nice. And they're only going to get bigger from here, which is good because that means stuff is happening on site, and that's great. The current invoice package is $392,441, and that is still below 1% of the total budget, and it brings our total invoiced to a little over 10 million, which is approximately 10% of the total budget, leaves 90% left. Scrolling down to our cash flow. Again, not much movement here, but our yellow line here, which signals where we are in time, has moved 1 month to the right. And we can see our current invoice package here in green, slightly smaller, or quite a bit smaller than last month. But again, we expect that to climb. Construction has only just begun, and it's going to get ramped up really, really fast, and that's great. So we can see our projection here in blue. And again, this line over here is where we're holding contingency. So unless there's any questions there, continue to move on, but I'll just leave it a second. Okay.
You know, Connor, if you could go back to the cash flow for a second.
Of course.
I would like to, at this point, reset, now that construction has begun, reset our gray bars, which are the projection, the original projection, to be the current moment in time, because I think it'll give us a much more meaningful baseline so that as construction goes on, some of this is going to start reflecting you know, the real, telling the real story. Are we behind? Are we ahead? In terms of value put into the building. So this is going to start evolve a little bit in the next month or two, as you see it. Go on, Connor. Thank you.
Zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole thing, but if it's too small, just let me know. You can zoom back in. So we have 4 invoices this month, 1 for Answer Accenture, 2 for Danisco, and 1 for CTA, their second rec. For Answer this month, we have an invoice for $23,612. That's 1% of Accenture's total contract, and that brings the contract up to 33% billed, leaving 67% remaining. For Danisco, we have 2 invoices, 1 for their January services, and then 1 for their subconsultant OTO, who is their geotechnical engineer. And the invoice for Danisco's January services is $65,000, and for Danisco's subconsultant invoice, that's $3,295.88, and that's 1% of their total contract overall, bringing them up to 72% complete and 28% remaining. For CTA Rec 2, a little smaller than last month. They're just getting going on site, and for this requisition, it's mostly just mobilization stuff, some subcontractor bonds, which are less than CTA's bonds, which was on the previous invoice, which is why it's smaller. And next month, we expect this to be quite a bit larger as work has now kicked off and we're moving forward. So for this month, this invoice is for $300,532.50. It's 0%. They're less than 1% of their contract overall, brings them up to 2% complete and 98% remaining. So I'll stop again for questions. Oh, and you can see in this period, we have begun holding retainage. That's something that hasn't been quite relevant in a while, but is becoming relevant again now that we have a contractor back on site and they're performing work. So I'll just point that out there.
And retainage, for those who are not aware, is a practice of, let's say they finish a thing, like the entire first floor slab, which obviously we're not there yet. And we recognize in the requisition that they are owed payment for 100% of that piece of work. It is a contract term that 5% of that value be held back as something called retainage. And that continues to accumulate until the end of a project in order to provide a very healthy incentive for everyone involved with the job to come back and finish those last bits and not disappear on us. There will be some retainage released, probably, you know, the steel contractor will not want to hang around until we've done painting the building, right, all the walls, but we continue to hold that as incentive and an extra sort of safety measure, and that is a standard practice in the industry.
Yeah, Danisco will do their punch list and make sure that any mistakes or anything that needs rectifying or needs to be improved is done. And then they'll get their retainage release. And like you said, the steel, once they're done, you know, they can be punched out. And so the retainage held on their contract won't make it all the way to the end. There'll probably be some retainage released over the course of the project as people are punched out, but yeah. So, any questions? Scrolling down to the invoices. First out, the answer invoice for January. And we can see Lee Figgins, our on-site clerk of the works, and Bob Stevens, who is an alternative clerk of the works, who's also going to be covering on site at times, are now popping up on our invoices. That was the cover page, and now we go to the backup.
Connor, a question, if I may, on the Lee Figgins, the clerk. I saw that there were 22 hours there.
Yep.
That's 22 hours a week or 22 hours for 2 weeks, a month? I mean,
Go ahead, Connor.
It's total for the month.
So he's not
for
there.
this period.
He's not a full-time. We don't have a full-time clerk. Is that
Yeah.
Bruce, he is absolutely a full-time individual on site. This invoices was January and construction started on February 3rd.
Of course. Sorry.
So
we're done.
Yeah, so this was Lee's time, a little bit of Bob's time starting to cover those early couple of days, and Lee's time in coordination, in preparation to kick off construction. Going forward, what you're going to see most likely is more than 40 hours a week of a clerk, because there will be many Saturdays worked. There may be long days worked as CTA continues to push the schedule to get this project done in an expedited manner. So that is you will start seeing that next month.
Actually, Cassandra, it's at some point, not now. It might be helpful for folks to know what a clerk does. I'm not sure that everybody knows what a clerk does, and it's a really important presence.
It's a great question, and we are extraordinarily lucky to have Lee Figgins for a clerk. Lee is a geotechnical, especially at this stage of our work. Lee is a geotechnical engineer by training. He has over 35 years of experience in public construction. He is also an LSP, a licensed site professional. And he is there not to direct work. Right, we have a very big wall with relation to that, so that we do not mess with CTA's means and methods of performing the work. He is there to observe and document and to be the eyes and ears for the design team and for the town on everything that's happening there daily. When something is happening that may not be quite as expected, Lee brings it to all of our attention immediately, so that those resolutions can start happening immediately and any coordination around it. He is in daily communication with CTA's on-site superintendent, Leo Gallant, who is also an extremely experienced individual. And Lee is completely instrumental in making sure that the quality of construction is what it needs to be. And that is going to, the content of that is going to evolve as we move out of the ground into steel, into building envelope enclosure, into finishes and mechanical systems. But the necessity of that role continues to be vital. I should also say that on MSBA projects, a full-time supervision, independent supervision is a requirement.
Thanks.
So back to the backup, and as always, you can stop me at any time to ask questions, just like Bruce did, and those were two great questions, so please feel free to jump in at any time. That's it for the backup for answer. On to Danisco's first invoice for their January services. And to their second invoice for their subconsultant, geotechnical engineer subconsultant, OTO.
As you go through this process, you're going to see that the way Danisco bills is going to be very different from the way that we bill. In the sense that their construction administration contractual amount is broken down into the number of months of construction, with one level of billing during the construction of a building, which is the more complex part, and a different lesser monthly amount during the demolition and site work that happens after that. And then there's a closeout line in the contract that's separate and beyond that. So Danisco's invoices are likely to look exactly like this every month henceforth. The OPM invoices are more of a T&M, time and material. I mean, just time. It's just time. We have no materials. You know, based on Dear Diary, this is what I did today. Which you see here and will fluctuate, but as we hit a stride in construction, it's going to become more consistent.
Yeah, that's exactly why there's no backup for Danisco's January invoice, because it's on a payment schedule. So we'll continue to see this 65 here for the foreseeable future. But wow. So back to the subconsultant invoice, which we will have backup for their invoice. Shown here. More similar to the style of Answers invoice.
And Carl, let me say a couple of words about what the geotechnical engineer is doing out there. So at this moment in time, their presence in site is very important, because before any concrete footing is placed on the either native or compacted soil, they need to inspect it and make sure that that soil is structurally suitable to sustain and support that foundation. So they're out there making sure that the subsurface conditions are appropriate, and then giving clearance to the concrete crew to, to form and place the footings. So you will see a lot of their participation in the next few months, or I guess through the month of February.
On to CTA's second requisition for $300,532.50. So the column we look for here is this period column here, where they'll be billing. So a lot of it for general conditions and mobilization, project management. See some billing for shop drawings and subcontractor bonds. And as work has just started on site, we don't have any billing for that yet.
A lot of the billing that Connor's scrolling by now is all the shop drawing work that the structural steel contractor is doing, and they do a lot of engineering as part of that work. So it is more substantial than, let's say, a painter's submittals.
And then this is a summary page. It's in MSBA's preferred format, more pleasant to look at. So you can see that here. And then you can see the retainage that we were talking about earlier, building up here. And that's the end of our invoices. So as always, we have pre-reviewed these invoices and recommend them for your approval. And we're happy to take any more questions.
I move to approve as presented.
Shane seconds. And Connor, you can take down the screen, I think, just so help me call out names. Are there any other questions before I call for, get the vote? It doesn't look like it. So Kathy is a yes. Bruce?
I approve, yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
And Simone?
Yes.
So I have one question before I turn it open for public comments on as this proceeds. One of the things that Danisco Design and your engineers did was with that early site package was we raised the level of dirt underneath the building and compacted it. At this point is when that all matters for that. So are we know that we're at the higher grade that you wanted to be before the foundation of the building went in. So it's just sort of a question on one part happened one time and now we're actually out there in the winter putting the concrete in.
So if I can explain yes, we did two things. We raised the ultimate grade of the building to something higher than the existing building. So that's where the building's going to be. Part of the geotechnical improvements was to, after installing the rammed aggregate piers, putting 4 or 5 feet of earth up on top of the footprint, which mimicked the weight of the completed building, to weight everything down and get all the settlement that we could out of that. And the geotechnical engineer monitored that right up through December, and the movement got to where we wanted it to be. And now all that dirt on top, which also now has been happily providing insulation for where they want to dig from the freezing weather, because frost hasn't gone 4 or 5 feet deep yet. That all that dirt is going to be pushed off around the building and used to raise the grade up to where the building's going to be. So that's what's been going on. They keep that overburden on so that the ground where the foundations are gonna be laid, they keep that on until they're ready to actually do the foundation work so they don't expose more up to freezing.
I'll
Thank you.
I'll add that we didn't expect to have extra months for that soil to sit and continue compressing, but we got it, and it's only to the better.
So I see I've sparked a comment from Bruce. Bruce,
Ksenia just said what I was going to ask, because I didn't know that you were monitoring it month by month. So I was going to ask whether, in fact, we could at least put down one silver bullet lining to the delay, which is that it actually compressed more. And I guess I just got my answer before I asked the question.
thank you.
It's typical of this crowd, I think. Thank you very much. Ksenia.
So, any other questions or comments? Connor has put a hold on all of our calendars, so you should know on meeting dates. And if not, I will turn it, I will open it to public comments. And we have one attendee. I have, Maria, I have brought you in, so you should be able to talk.
Super. Thanks, Kathy. First of all, Ksenia, thank you. You, as Bruce suggested, you continually answer questions before we can ask them. I appreciate all the level of detail. It's wonderful. Thank you. This is really a question, I think, more for Melissa. I had mentioned last month if we could possibly get a little bit of information about how the financing is looking for Amherst residents, and the override. How does we haven't done this before, so I'm just kind of curious about how all that is going to start to look, when we should expect to start seeing this on our tax bills, and where the money is coming from. So that would be lovely if that could maybe be tossed in there as a little explanation at the next visit. But thank you all very much.
Thank you for your comment. And I think that is it for today, unless I see any other remaining comments or hands or questions. So I will, a couple people who couldn't make the meeting today said they'd love to see the pictures. So if that photo collection is available, Ksenia will get it put into the packet.
Sending it over right now.
That was a gift. And she's been sending out short notes. So I thought this is a good way of having it compiled each time on what's happening each time. Is the pictures are much better than just notes, so that's great.
I'll add that I'm happy to
and the notes were like to Tammy, sort of people that the school that's being affected to this. Yeah.
So I'm looking for guidance from everyone on how broadly to distribute those kind of updates that have some pictures, some description of what's going on, what the names of the companies are that are out there on site. We are rebooting the process of updating the project website. And I think that would be a place that may be appropriate to have some abbreviated version of that. So happy to do whatever, and also happy to provide any support for educational curriculum that might be drawn from this. I having a sixth grader of my own, I have a passion for that. So
I see Allison's hand is up. Allison.
I think that it's a great idea to think about that. And as you're talking, I want us to realize that a lot of people in the community will get their cues just from looking at the site. So I have people coming to me saying, oh no, this isn't going to happen. There's no work happening. And I had to say to them, nope, it actually looks like we're on track. And I'm wondering if there, because I know sometimes construction sites have like a sign saying like the name of the company or whatever, but I'm wondering if there could be like a little sign underneath that says on track for summer for 2026, like something that just indicates you might not be seeing what you think is progress, but we are actually on track to be, for this project to be completed on time. And I think there's just a lot that's happening in the community with budget issues and how this is impacting employees. And I just think it'd be helpful for people to have a visual reminder that and if things are getting delayed, so that they're not, because, oh, let me talk to Allison. Like, I just feel like people are paying a lot of attention to that site visually. So if there was a sign, just a little sentence or word that said on track, or, delayed until winter 2026, I mean, anything that helps people kind of keep track of that. I think there's just a lot of feelings around this, and I'd like us to be sensitive to that.
Can do that also in about 3 weeks to a month time. What they'll see, hope for a visual cue, is the structural steel of a building in place or starting to go up. That'll have some visual impact.
So, Paul, I see your hand, Allison.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Allison. I think what our duty is to the public is to give them information that they can consume pretty easily without a lot of details. So I think that getting on the website, getting that to be so the principals can share it out to their, and sort of like, here's where we are this month. We're doing well. We're on track. We're not on track. These are the things that are coming up, but it has to be like in English where people can understand it. And I think that's our duty to our residents. So I think that will be, and I think Sam in our office can help with the communications on that as well, but she knows our community pretty well.
Jonathan.
I liked it.
Yeah, but that's okay. because then you can go, but I see Jonathan, it was a great comment, Allison, that sparked.
Just wanted to respond to that briefly. I try to target the writing of our construction updates to be something that could be taken and used in the classroom if they wanted to use it as part of a curriculum just based on that. So I try to use language. I mean, I explain my projects to my 6th grader daily. So if a 6th grader can understand it, I think that's a good, like, that's a good level of transparency and simplicity.
Jonathan.
I guess I'd just like to kind of agree with Allison and Paul, and let's get some nice simple information out there. It occurs to me I get sometimes multiple kind of notices from the school system every day as a parent of students in the school system, and maybe there was something, but nothing's sticking in my head that, oh, hey, this project started. I know the project started because I'm sitting here today. But there's probably a lot of other parents. Even honestly, my wife came up to me about a month ago and said, is it happening? Is it on schedule? I had to say yes, but it doesn't look like much when you drop your kid off or pick your kid up. And so, yes, let's do something. Let's make a little noise.
Deb. You're muted.
To that point, maybe once the information has been uploaded, you could let us know, and might be worthwhile having a small presentation of somebody at one of the school committee meetings, the Amherst School Committee meetings. That'd be great. Thank you.
So this was great, high energy, and it is very exciting. So I'm not seeing any other hands up, and thanks, Allison, very much for joining, and I can make sure you see the pictures that you missed before you first came in. We also had a brief discussion on having some regular tour-like things where people could visit, setting up in the future when there's something to see. So particularly for the schools. So Ksenia is going to get back to us on that. So not seeing any other hands. We've started doing motions to adjourn just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and I'll call for a vote. Kathy's a yes. Bruce?
Yep.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
And Melissa's quite sick, so it's really nice that she joined us. Melissa, Simone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all, and we'll see each other again in a month virtually. Thanks. We're adjourned.
I